As NFL fans and just normal human beings in general, we fall in love with these hypothetical scenarios. Why, one may ask? It's probably because we like to think about the potential best case scenarios we never got to witness in real life. In the NFL, there have been a lot of what ifs. What if Bo Jackson stayed healthy throughout his career? What if David Tyree dropped the famous helmet catch and the Patriots finished with a perfect 19-0 season? But there is one what if that has changed the NFL landscape as we know it today, and you might have never even thought about it. And with that, I present to you NFL's what ifs. How Teddy Bridgewater's 2016 knee injury flipped the NFL world upside down and helped a team win its first Super Bowl in franchise history.
'Cause there's nowhere in this world that I can take you. As the pillars of creation become red, all the stars you pass will only serenade you. In the starstream, no one gets that far ahead.
Now, before this video starts, I just want to give a huge shout out to Brandon Lee Goutman of SB Nation and the manager-in-chief editor of Bleeding Green Nation for this great idea. He actually wrote a piece about it back in 2018. I'll drop a link in the bio. It's an amazing story. Go check it out. But let's get into it. Let's start with quarterback Teddy Bridgewater, who is one of the most beloved players in the NFL today. Bridgewater played his college ball at the University of Louisville. In his final season as a junior, he led the Cardinals to a 12-1 record, which included a blowout 36-9 win over the Miami Hurricanes in the Russell Athletic Bowl. Bridgewater finished the season throwing for nearly 4,000 yards, 31 touchdowns, and only 4 interceptions. His play proved to be good enough to be worthy as a first-round pick, as the Minnesota Vikings selected Bridgewater with the number 32 overall pick. Bridgewater didn't make his first start until Week 4 versus the Atlanta Falcons. He managed to help the Vikings reach their second win of the season, but was injured before the game ended and was replaced by quarterback Christian Ponder. Bridgewater would finish his rookie year with a 6-6 record, passing for 2,900 yards, 14 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. After missing the playoffs that year, the Vikings had a sense of optimism heading into the 2015 season, and they were right. The Vikings finished with an 11-5 record and clinched the NFC North for the first time since 2009. This set up a wild-card matchup with the Seattle Seahawks where, well, I'll let Blair Walsh show you how it ended.
McDermott is the snapper, and the kick is no good!
Yeah, sorry Vikings fans, but if that made your stomach uneasy, then you might want to turn this video off now because it's about to get a whole lot worse. Even with the heartbreak, Bridgewater looked to be the Vikings franchise guy for years to come after leading the Vikings to the playoffs and even making a Pro Bowl appearance in only his second year. Unfortunately, this was the beginning of the end. It was a normal morning at the Vikings practice facility. Less than a half an hour in on the second play of practice, Bridgewater fell to the ground without any contact whatsoever.
Terrible news for Minnesota Vikings quarterback Teddy Bridgewater today. Just 25 minutes into practice, Bridgewater tore his ACL, dislocated his left kneecap while planting to throw.
It was the absolute worst case scenario. On top of tearing his ACL, Bridgewater also dislocated his knee. Dan Cooper, who is actually the Cowboys team physician, constructed the surgery on Bridgewater, and his quotes about it will make your mouth drop. Cooper stated, "It's mangled. You make the skin incision and there's nothing there. It's almost like a war wound. Everything is blown." He also stated it was the worst knee dislocation in sports that he had ever seen. With the injury taking place, Bridgewater would miss nearly every snap over the next 2 seasons. But with an abundance of talent still intact on the Vikings roster, Mike Zimmer had a decision. Enter Sammy Sleeves, or as you may know him as, Sam Bradford. Coming off of a 2-year extension which would pay Bradford up to $36 million, the Eagles had planned on starting Bradford Week 1 against the Cleveland Browns. Even with the team trading up to the number 2 overall spot in that year's draft and selecting quarterback Carson Wentz, the blueprint was to let him sit a majority of the year and learn under not only Bradford, but the backup quarterback as well in Chase Daniel, who the Eagles decided to sign a 2-year, $21 million deal. Why? Who knows? But that story's for another day. It was a smart plan. I mean, look how it worked out for Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre, and the Green Bay Packers. And let's not forget, Patrick Mahomes also sat his rookie year before tossing 50 touchdowns and winning an MVP the following season. But just like many other things in the NFL, this didn't go quite according to plan. After the Bridgewater injury, the Vikings traded a 1st and 4th round pick for Sam Bradford. No, I'm not kidding. They traded a 2017 first and a 2018 4th round pick. A first and well, you get the point. And we'll come back to who those draft picks ended up being because they played such a pivotal part in Philly's success. So the Eagles gained draft capital that they had lost trading up for Carson Wentz, and the Vikings received a veteran quarterback who they had hoped would be serviceable enough to help guide them back into the postseason. For Philly, the Birds finally came to their senses and named Carson Wentz quarterback number 1 over Chase Daniel just 5 days before the start of the season. His rookie season consisted of a ton of ups and downs, finishing with 16 touchdowns and 14 interceptions. As for the Vikings, it actually looked like the trade was paying off. Minnesota started off the 2016 season winning their first 5 games. In their 6th game of the season, the Vikings traveled to, you guessed it, Philadelphia, where they would then face the 3-2 Eagles. The game started off ugly and it didn't get any better. Bradford was pressured all day, getting sacked 6 times, which caused him to throw his first interception of the year. The entire game was anything but pretty. Both teams combined for 5 turnovers in the first quarter and 8 turnovers over the entire game. The Eagles would end up winning 21-10, getting some sweet revenge on Bradford and the Vikings. Now, ultimately, it didn't matter. The Eagles, who were now 4-2, would miss the playoffs, finishing with a 7-9 record. And it wasn't any brighter for the Vikings either, as they became only the 8th team in NFL history to start with a record of 5-0 or better and then miss the playoffs. They would finish the season with an 8-8 record. So I guess you could say no one really won this trade. Yet. In 2017, this is where it gets really juicy. Remember the 1st round pick that Minnesota sent Philly for Sam Bradford? Well, the Eagles used that pick on Tennessee defensive lineman Derek Barnett, who had, believe it or not, just broke Reggie White's sack record for the Volunteers. Now, Barnett is an important name in this story, so remember his name. As week 1 rolled around, both Bradford and Wentz led their teams to wins. Wentz threw for over 300 yards and 2 touchdowns, while Bradford threw for over 300 and 3 touchdowns as well. There was only one difference between the two. Bradford, just like Bridgewater, would wind up suffering a non-contact knee injury during the win. He would only start one more game that season due to the emergence of backup quarterback Case Keenum, who finished the season with an 11-3 record, throwing for 22 touchdowns and only 7 picks. Now, let's fast forward to week 9. Both teams were at the top of their divisions, as Minnesota had won 4 straight, propelling them to a 6-2 record, while the Philadelphia, on the other hand, had just won their 6th straight game, improving to 7-1. Now, just hours before the trade deadline, the Eagles traded for Dolphins running back Jay Ajayi, and guess what pick they used? Yup, you guessed it, the 2018 4th round draft pick they had received for their old friend Sammy Sleeves. Joining LeGarrette Blount and Corey Clement, Ajayi made a huge impact immediately. In his first game for the Birds, he ripped off a 46-yard touchdown, helping the Eagles beat the Broncos 51-23 just 5 days after he was traded. Now, both teams were rolling as the season progressed, but another knee injury just had to take place, didn't it? Only this time, it wasn't for the Vikings. It was for the Eagles. After throwing for the go-ahead touchdown against the Rams in what would be a division-clinching win, Carson Wentz exited the game in the 3rd quarter. A day later, Eagles fans' nightmares came true. It was announced he had officially torn his ACL. He would be out for the season. Wentz finished the year with 33 touchdowns and only 7 interceptions. Nick Foles then took over the helm and helped the Eagles reach a 13-3 record, clinching not only a first-round bye, but home field advantage throughout the playoffs as well. His close friend Case Keenum was right there with him, as the Vikings also finished with a 13-3 record. Each team won their first playoff game, making history. The Eagles became the first #1 seed underdog during a divisional matchup, and after a Jalen Mills pass breakup, the Eagles moved on to the conference championship. The Vikings also had a little drama, as Stephon Diggs became the first player in NFL history to score a walk-off touchdown in a playoff game after his 61-yard touchdown to beat the Saints. This set up round 2 between the two teams, and there was a ton of hype surrounding it. Philly had officially embraced the underdog role, as their fans entered the stadium wearing a dog mask. I mean, I'm all for it, just a little weird. Vikings fans, on the other hand, thought it would be a good idea to visit the OG underdog, as a swarm of purple people shouted their skull chant on top of the Rocky Steps. Looking back now, probably not the best idea. But anyway, let's get back to the game. As I said earlier, the Birds were underdogs yet again at home, only this time it was against the Vikings, who possessed the #1 defense in the entire league. Both teams without their day one quarterbacks, both teams with a chance to advance to the big game. With a win, Minnesota would be the first team in NFL history to play the Super Bowl on their home turf, and it looked like that might just happen. The game started off perfectly. Well, if you're a Vikings fan. Minnesota stormed 75 yards right down the field on their opening drive, capped off by a 25-yard touchdown pass from Case Keenum to tight end Kyle Rudolph. And the Vikings defense started off just as strong. On Philadelphia's opening drive, they were forced to punt, giving the ball back to Minnesota with a chance to go up 2 possessions. And a touchdown was scored, only by the opposite team, thanks to Patrick Robinson. Keenum was hit by Chris Long and threw an interception to cornerback Patrick Robinson. 50 yards and a few seconds later, Robinson would score, tying up the game at 7 apiece and taking all the momentum away from Minnesota. Moments later, the Birds would score again on a LeGarrette Blount touchdown, extending the lead 14-7. The Vikings were entering a dangerous place, but Keenum was driving them down the field, facing a 3rd and 5 at Philly's 16-yard line. Now let's pause there. Remember that name I told you to remember a few minutes back, Derek Barnett, who the Eagles selected with the Vikings' first-round pick? Well, let's just say it was his time to shine. On that 3rd down, the Vikings tried and pulled tight end David Morgan to block Barnett, but it was way too slow. Barnett flew right past the tight end and strip-sacked Keenum, giving the Eagles the ball back. Philly took full advantage of the opportunity, and as Foles and company scored again on a 53-yard touchdown bomb to Alshon Jeffrey, and scoring a field goal right before half to go up 24-7. The Vikings were rattled and didn't come back with anything. Their opening drive touchdown, in which they looked so good on, would be their only one of the night en route to a 38-7 loss. It was over for the Minnesota Vikings. Their season was officially over. And if that wasn't painful enough, the 2 picks they traded to the Eagles were huge contributing factors. First-round pick Derek Barnett finished the game with 2 tackles, which included the game-changing strip sack. The 2018 4th-round pick, which the Eagles turned into Jay Ajayi, also joined in on the fun. He led the run game with 73 yards while adding another 26 yards through the air. After all of the mocked skull chants and multiple celebrations, the Birds were finally headed back to the Super Bowl, which led to something that Vikings fans might want to close their eyes at. Yeah, that's gotta be a tough sight to look at. As for the Super Bowl, Nick Foles got a majority of the credit for knocking off the Patriots and bringing Philly its first Super Bowl in franchise history. And let's not forget, though, what those Vikings draft picks did in the big game. Ajayi was impressive again. He averaged 6.3 yards per carry, setting up the run game early with LeGarrette Blount. But the real winner was that first-round pick, Derek Barnett. With 2 minutes and 16 seconds left and the Eagles up 38-33, Tom Brady dropped back before getting sacked for the first and only time in this game by Brandon Graham. Only, it wasn't just a sack. Brady had lost the ball, and guess who recovered it? none other than Derek Anthony Barnett. One Jake Elliott field goal and a failed Hail Mary attempt later, and the Eagles were officially world champions, winning it on Minnesota's home field with the help of players given to them with the Vikings' help. So let's rewind. Without Teddy Bridgewater getting injured, there is no Sam Bradford trade. And without no Sam Bradford trade, the Eagles remain without a first-round pick due to the trade up for Carson Wentz. That also means there's no 2018 fourth-round draft pick, which led to Jay Ajayi. This means that Bradford starts that 2016 season for the Eagles. Wentz remains QB3 on the depth chart, and there is no such thing as the Derek Barnett strip sack or fumble recovery, which I guess means only one thing. The Patriots probably would have won it again. Yeah, it's a lot to take in, but isn't that what's fun about it? If you have a request below on another what if, let me know and I'll consider it for the next video. Also hit that subscribe button and follow your boy on Twitter at HotSeatThad. Peace.